全球聊天室特别邀请到现在都还驻守在俄罗斯的 Evgeny Albets， 他呢让他来谈一谈俄罗斯国内的现况、新闻界的风声鹤唳，以及作为记者该如何在这么险峻的时刻无畏地见证这个时代。Albets 他在跟 CNN 的访问当中，他有提到说，已经有超过160位最顶尖的记者都已经离开俄罗斯了。但在许多媒体同业一个接一个离开这个 hopeless 这个无望的环境的同时，他说他不畏惧来自克林姆林宫的迫害，因为他认为总要有人要为家乡的新闻自由奋斗。Evgeny Albets 他是新时代 The New Times 杂志的总编兼执行长，也是一位享誉国际的调查记者，同时他也是政治学的研究者，也是作家，也是主持人。在1989年的时候，那个时候 Albets 他以针对俄罗斯产房的恶劣条件的调查报道，获得了金笔奖 Golden Pen of Freedom Award。然后到1992年 ，Albets 成为第一位调查苏联时期情报组织 KGB 的记者。除此之外，Albets 他过去曾经任教于哈佛以及耶鲁大学，而他也是国际调查记者联盟 ICIJ 的成员。那接下来我们把时间交给记者陈之宁，要透过之宁和 Albets 的对谈，了解俄罗斯第一线记者的危难还有困境。
So this is a very difficult moment in Russia and Ukraine in general, and especially for the independent media in Russia. But you have decided to stay and to continue doing your work as a journalist. So please tell us about the condition you are facing right now and why you choose to stay, while others have decided to exile or flee.
Thank you for your concern. I don't know how long I will be able to stay here in Russia because the situation is getting from bad to worse. Russian authorities passed some repressive laws that basically make it close to impossible to write anything unless you are ready to risk 15 years in jail. Just yesterday, the new addendums to the repressive law, less than 1 month old, were passed. And in according to that, no critique of President Putin or State Duma or army. And so it goes, any state agencies, no critique is plausible. So it becomes real difficult. Basically, all of us, all independent websites, all independent electronic media got shut down. We work under the VPN. It means that our readers or our listeners, they have to have virtual private network. Basically, the way it happens in Hong Kong. Your listeners, they should be aware about that because what happened in Russia in the last month, that's exactly what happened in Hong Kong in, half a year ago. Mm-hmm. So a lot of journalists immigrated, left the country. As I said, all independent networks and websites and publications, they are under either assault or they totally blocked. There are, people, even newsmakers, even, people who used to be in entertainment business, they spoke against the war and therefore they had to leave. They have to leave the country. So that's the situation. It's not nice.
Our audience is very interested in knowing what the Russian people think about this war and about the current situation. We will greatly appreciate your insights about Russian public opinion at this moment.
It's a good question. Because for one, there is no way I can know what Russian people think in general. Unlike in democracies, in authoritarian regimes, it's very difficult to conduct a poll. People who are afraid to get caught being in disagreement with the government, they prefer not to answer questions. So basically, pollsters, they measure and they record those who agree with the government. Therefore, we have slightest idea, what Russians really think about that. My guess that it is 50-50, that probably it's also, there is a demographic divide, a huge demographic divide, because probably people of your age, they are more against the war because they don't want to die. They want to live in a prosperous democratic country, to have access to the World Wide Web and to the world in general, travel, make money, be happy, make kids, and enjoy their life. However, people, just to give you an example, in the matter of the last 2 weeks, 80,000 IT specialists left Russia. Another 100,000 are about to leave Russia. In the matter of the last week since the beginning of the war, 250,000 people abruptly left, predominantly Moscow and St. Peter. And these are journalists, creative people, people from businesses, people who were involved in all kinds of business activities. So people are just leaving Russia en masse. However, people of the older age, people who are dependable upon subsidies from the Russian government, people who live on their retirement compensations or on sponsorship help from the state budget, they are more dependable and they don't have an option to leave. They are more susceptible to, they're more prone to the state propaganda machine, and they listen to the state propaganda networks and consume these without, any critique or without the possibility for any alternative.
Meanwhile, the US, NATO, and their allies are imposing economic sanctions on Russia, which will isolate the country and affect Russian people. What do we need to know about the impact of this policy and what they will mean for Russia as a society?
There have been such severe actions taken against a modern country with a modern economy as the ones that were taken against the Russian Federation. Yes, back in, I believe in 2011, United States imposed sanctions on Iran in order to stop Iran's nuclear program. So there were, in accordance with these sanctions, Iranian banks, their accounts were frozen, they were cut off from this messenger, financial messenger SWIFT, and the most important, the embargo on oil produced by Iranian companies was introduced, and it made it impossible for Iran to trade its oil. As a result, inflation reached 43%. There were unrest all across the country. People had problems getting the food, the kind of necessary food that they got accustomed to eat on a regular basis. And by the end of 2012, Iran proclaimed refusal from the further development of its nuclear program. Russia obviously is a much bigger country, both in terms of the population-wise and geography. It's the biggest country on the face of the world, and it has the population of 144 million people. So far, there are sanctions. The half of the Russia's hard currency reserves got frozen. Another half is in Chinese yuan and in gold, which are very difficult, to sell. Both gold and Chinese currency, very difficult to operate with. Especially since, the majority of import-export operations exist in Russia, they were in euros and in dollars. On top of that, all imports in the country just got stalled. The majority of the banks which were in charge of transactions necessary for these import-export operations, either under sanctions or no longer can operate. Rich people lost a hell of a lot of money because they invested in Russian blue chips as well as some. And now, their money either frozen or they just, they lost everything they invested into these Russian blue chips. The most important that following the barbarian bombardment of the Ukrainian cities, more than 300 different companies stopped their operation from the West and from other countries, but predominantly from the West. They stopped their operation in Russia, whether we're talking about PricewaterhouseCoopers or Ernst & Young, or whether we're talking about McDonald's, which closed all its 850 stores. So as a result, more than 600,000 people lost their jobs. The industry is unable to substitute the goods that were imported from the world, just as any other country is based, unless we're in North Korea. Any other country is part of this global distribution of labor and production. So Russia, which is a modern economy, post-industrial economy, got cut off from the rest of the world. So there is no way to substitute this. As a result, already prices went up. The predictions are that as a result of sanctions imposed, Russian economy is going to lose 20% of GDP at minimum, maybe even more than that, but at least 20% of GDP. And the real incomes will go down 20%. It means that if now we have about 17 million people fully below the poverty line, probably in Moscow, people will see the painful outcomes of sanctions imposed by mid of April. In the majority of cities with the population 500,000 more, it probably, they will feel the pain at the beginning of summer. We cannot, have impact on the decision-making sphere. We cannot stop this war. However, these are Russian citizens, ordinary folks, who are going to pay the biggest price for the decision made by President Vladimir Putin himself.